welcome to episode 20 of So I've Been Told. It's taken a while to get here, but here we are. Life has gotten in the way of me putting out a lot of podcasts lately, but I'm really excited about this particular episode. I had John Ward, who made a documentary about the Capitol, a venue that used to be in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, that I used to spend a fair amount of time at, and I'm sure a good number of our listeners did as well. He made this documentary called The Capital of Nowhere, and it's really freaking cool. He was able to send me a screener. I felt real cool and special. But yeah, he shot this whole documentary on his iPhone, and I think that really is super cool. I mean, look at, this whole DIY thing. I mean, it's right there, DIY. Do it yourself. Sometimes you don't always have the best quality, but you put it out because you care about it, much like this podcast. But that's not the case with this documentary. It looks phenomenal. I never would have guessed that it was shot on an iPhone had I not known. But anyway, I am just going to get right to it, let you guys hear the interview. Of a conversation than an interview, not like Larry King over here. But anyway, as I was saying, I'm just going to let you hear the conversation we had. I hope you enjoy it. Make sure you check out The Capital of Nowhere when it is available for you to see. And whenever that happens, whenever there's an update, I will make sure I update the So I've Been Told Facebook page. I'm going to try to be a little bit more present on there, and also with my output. Hopefully I'll get some more cool conversations out to you all. Anyway, I'm not even going to say anything at the end of the podcast. I'm just going to let you listen to the conversation, and that'll be it. Thanks so much for listening to these 20 episodes, guys. Hopefully there will be more in the near future. Enjoy. What was your... Well, first of all, I'm Adam. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
I feel like we probably were at some of the same shows, but, just never met. But, so what was your introduction to this kind of punk rock and punk... and I mean that in a broad sense, like... I consider anything, DIY related to be a part of that. So what was your introduction to that?
So I got into punk music because of my older brother.
Okay.
I have an older brother who's 10 years older than me, and I don't exactly remember when it was, but he introduced me to Blink-182 back in like the Cheshire Cat and Dude Ranch days.
Yeah, nice.
So I got into it then, and then I was kind of into it, but not like mostly just into Blink. Like I wasn't really like branching out in any way. And then my younger cousin, my brother's 4 years younger than me, and we have a cousin that's his same age, and he's one who kind of really introduced us to like a lot of the drive-through bands, and that was kind of like the introduction to them. And I think like around that time, it may have been like right around when like Tell All Your Friends came out from Taking Back Sunday and stuff. So he kind of like expanded, especially my horizons as far as like the different types of bands. And I was never, that's definitely more pop punk, obviously. So yeah. I can't say that I was ever really into, some of the more, I guess, like what you consider traditional punk rock. But yeah, that was kind of it. So for me, it was from like my brother kind of intro me from like the SoCal punk rock scene, and then just like me finding like what I liked the most out of it.
Cool. And you grew up in Shamokin then?
I'm from Shamokin.
Okay.
So like my mom and like my mom's side of the family is really from there. But then we moved to Elysburg. Okay. Which is only 7 miles away for people who don't know.
Yeah.
So it's not really a big difference, but yeah. So I was from the area for my whole life. So
yeah. Well, yeah. I grew up right on the other side of the mountain. I lived in West Cameron, so
okay.
The Line Mountain School District. So
yep.
Not too far away. But
I mean, I feel like that whole area is like everybody kind of knows.
Yeah.
Everyone, like you know somebody from whether it's like Shamokin, Mount Carmel, Line Mountain, like Southern. I feel like that whole area just kind of blends together.
We all worked at Knoebels at one point.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I was a Crystal Pool lifeguard. So.
Okay.
So,
I was a rides guy. But so what was your first memory involving the Capitol?
My first memory of the Capitol, it's weird because I think it was a Sound the Alarm show. I only went to 2 shows actually. I didn't go to that many because it opened like right around the time I was going to college.
Okay.
But I remember going to Sound the Alarm because I remember thinking like, man, these guys are gonna be huge. Like, and I actually think I saw Self Against City there too.
Cool.
And thought the same thing. But one of my first memories was actually hearing a Seosin song that I didn't know, and I was like asking people if they knew it because it was in between sets, and they played it just like as downtime music. And I just remember that, and being like, I do remember being actually like blown away that this place existed because that was by that point in time they had the stage and everything built, and just seeing like the production value and I hadn't really gone to an intimate venue by that point in time. Like any show I'd gone to was a little bit bigger. Like I remember going to Incubus in high school at Hershey, like outside at the back of like the stadium area. So I just remember that aspect of it, and yeah, I mean, just thinking like kind of holding on to that memory in making this film too.
Cool. So when did you first get into filmmaking? What was your, what inspired that? And
so it's interesting because I really wasn't into it necessarily when I was in high school. We had like a very good video production class at Southern, but I've told people this story and they're kind of like, oh, you're the Zac Efron from High School Musical, and to my credit, I didn't know what that meant.
I mean, I know who Zac Efron is, but I don't understand the reference really.
Exactly. I was like, I don't understand what this reference is, and they were like, well, you were an athlete. Like I played soccer and basketball, and like, but you're an athlete who like fell in love with the arts and like had to make a choice between the two of them. And I don't necessarily think I had to make a choice necessarily, but in high school, like we weren't, I wanted to do the school play and things like that, and my basketball coach actually told me my senior year, he's like, you either do the play or you play basketball. Oh, wow. And I was like, well, I'm not going to play ever again competitively because I'm not playing in college. So I guess I'll do basketball because I didn't really think that this was going to be the path that I took. So I got into film in college. It's the long answer to that. I had been interested in film. I kind of fell in love with, it's funny, there's 3 films that I really look at that I kind of attribute to my love of filmmaking and just film in general. One was Good Will Hunting because I just loved the idea like that they wrote their own thing and they did it, and just that story itself was so good. The other was this is kind of funny because this is like around the same time of that like high school wanting to do the play thing was Lord of the Rings actually. Seeing something on that scale and like knowing how long the production was just something that I thought was super cool and like how close people became during that production. So I actually lied. There's 4 films, and then one was Into the Wild, the Sean Penn movie. Yeah. That I saw that actually in college at a small art theater, and it's just like I sat in my car for like 20 minutes after seeing it, just being like, man, if I can make something that impacts one person the way this film impacted me, then I'll feel like I did something right. And then the 4th one is just something that like I've always loved, and it's kind of like one of my favorite movies, which is It's a Wonderful Life. I just think that it's like it's timeless, so it's it holds up over decades. But yeah, that's how I got into it. And then in college, I was taking classes, and I made a short documentary in school about my soccer team that actually like won the Villanova Film Festival. That's where I went to school.
Okay, cool. That was going to be one of my next questions.
Yeah, so I went to Villanova. I went to I was probably way too focused on soccer, and was playing soccer there, and obviously it's a good school, but as for a communication major, it's not necessarily now it is. Back then, it wasn't necessarily something that you would go to the school for. So, for example, like the film major and the communication major I was in was communication with a concentration in media and film, and they basically didn't have a structure though, as far as like I just kind of took everything that I could, from production to acting to screenwriting, and then hustled my way onto an indie movie that was shooting in the area the spring of my senior year, and from there I just kind of had the bug to be involved within film, and like I wanted to do exactly what Matt Damon and Ben Affleck did, was write my own thing, act in it, like produce it, and then get into filmmaking more from that way. So I made the jump and moved out to LA like right after I graduated, and was out there for 4 years.
Cool. So what, the indie film that you got involved in, what were you doing with that in that film?
Yeah, so I was just a production assistant.
Okay.
I basically found out that they were filming around the movie's called Tenure. It actually had a really, really good cast. It was like Luke Wilson, Gretchen Mol, David Koechner, Rosemary DeWitt, Michael Cudlitz, like a lot of people who some people might not know the names, but if you see them, you're gonna be like, oh my god, like yeah, I know him from that. And people were just super supportive on that film. And when I talked about what I wanted to do, they're like, just do it, just go out and go out to LA and make it happen, which is encouraging, but also a little bit of a misnomer in terms of how they're like, yeah, just go, and I'm like, cool, and like you're 22, so you just say okay, and you go out and you try to make this this career happen that you really there's no blueprint anyway, but you're really, I think they that did me a disservice. They just didn't really explain how hard it would be. I mean, I knew it was going to be hard, but I think that at that age, you kind of still have that like naivety. So
yeah. So what did you work on in LA? And you said you were there for 4 years, right?
Yeah, I was there for 4 years. My life has been kind of all over the place a little bit. I mean, I wanted to, like I said, get into acting, so I really focused on that when I first got there, and was doing anything that I could, like music videos and short films and commercials and those sort of things. And then soccer came back into my life unexpectedly. I was playing in like an amateur team out there, and kind of got asked, do you want to play a little bit more seriously? So I joined it's called a PDL team, and then from there I got asked to train with the USL team, which now is like the league below the MLS. But back then, this was like 2011, 2012-ish. It just wasn't what it is now. So the prospects weren't as great. And then I had the opportunity to go to England to go on like a trial. And so I had to make the choice, like, do I go and do this, or do I stay and try to make, what I came out here for? And I decided, like, that was my first love, so I'll go and try that. But came back after that didn't work out. And for work, like, a lot of it was, like, work permits and things that I hadn't even considered being obstacles. But I came back, and that's when I was like, okay, I got to double down and figure out what I'm going to do. And I was at that point then still acting. I was doing improv. I joined, like, I took improv classes, got an improv troupe. So we were actually doing like once a week shows, like pretty consistently. So it was a lot of fun. And we were sort of surprised that we were able to book as often as we were. But then I just kind of knew that I wanted to take more control over my career. And at that point in time, I was like coaching soccer and bartending, and still doing interning at a production company at Zucker Productions, the production company that did like more in the 80s. They were pretty popular because they did like Airplane and Ghost and those kind of movies. So I was working there, just reading scripts and giving feedback on it. And I took the opportunity to ask people there, and then ask anybody that I met, just what could I do to kind of take control a little bit. And it was actually a guy, the daughter that I was coaching soccer for, who was a producer, and he was just a super nice guy. So I was like, I hate to overstep my bounds, but like I just got to ask you, like, what could I do to kind of take control? And he said, if you can do your own thing, go and do it. And I'd had this idea for the Capital of Nowhere since college.
Awesome.
So I kind of knew that I always wanted to make it. I didn't know how I was going to make it or how it was going to come out, but I was like, okay, I don't know, for whatever reason, I'd heard it from other people, but from whatever reason, him saying it really stuck. And I just said, all right, like my lease is up in December. I'm just going to move back to Pennsylvania and I'll do this thing. And I was very naive in that because I was like, I'll go back, I'll shoot it for a year, and then I'll move back to LA and edit it, and like it'll be cool. And then it didn't exactly go that way.
When was that you moved back to Pennsylvania to start working on it? What year was that?
That was, so it was the start of 2013. So
Okay.
I came home, like basically my lease ended up at the end of December. So I came home for Christmas and just stayed basically. So it was, I didn't really start on it though until 2013.
Yeah. What was the first step you took to putting it together? And I don't know anything about making a documentary, so I'm just curious to hear the process and how you went about it.
Neither did I. So, I mean, I had like a little experience in making the one that I did in college, but my first step was, who do I know that was involved in the venue? And like I said, my younger brother was pretty instrumental because he knew one guy who's in the documentary, Tom McCarthy.
Yeah, I know
they
Tom.
Kind of knew each other. Yeah. Oh, okay. So they kind of knew each other from when they were growing up, and I reached out to Tom on Facebook and said, hey, like, I know Lenny was, at the time, I thought Lenny was the only guy involved. So I just said, do you have his contact info? And basically, he gave it to me, I think he reached out to Lenny too to kind of let him know, like give him a heads up. But my first step was just to like talk to him, get him on board, and kind of go from there. I had an idea as far as like how I wanted to kind of present the history of Shamokin. Like I'd always thought that you're growing up in that area and you hear a lot about like what it used to be like. And like my grandmother, my mam is still alive, so she'll talk about that, and so I knew that side of it. But honestly, I think the one thing that I learned the most from this is just like how important planning is and how critical it is to do a lot of that. Like ask the questions you're going to ask in the interviews, but ask them ahead of time so you can figure out like just how many interviews or how many people you need to talk to. Because for me in this case, it was like, I talked to Lenny and he's like, oh, well, it wasn't just me. There was these 3 other guys who were like really influential in, getting it started and running it. And then you talk, and then he's like, and then there was like kind of like a second circle just outside of us of 4 people who really, really helped. So, the process for me was a little bit hodgepodge because I didn't really know, and I knew I wanted to talk to some bands, but the only one that I really knew, well, there's a few that I knew of, but the only one that like really stuck to me was Hidden in Plain View, because the genesis of this idea actually came when they came and played at Villanova about maybe a month and a half or so after playing the Capitol show. Okay. Cool. That they played, and I talked to them after that show because I joked, I was like, yeah, you guys played a show at this venue called the Capitol in Shamokin, and they're like, oh man, it was crazy, it was awesome. And they joked, they're like, there was probably more people there than there were here. Which was probably true. And because Villanova is a little bit can be a little conservative. So we were talking for a little bit, and I remember leaving that show and thinking like, well, if they're saying that about this venue, like there's got to be something about it that, the fact that they were able to attract Hidden in Plain View at that time, they were still touring all over, still doing a lot of stuff. So that was kind of where the idea kind of just got, like, the seed got planted in my head to hold on to this and kind of put it on the back burner till when I thought I could actually do it.
Yeah. Was contacting the bands, was it difficult, or was it a pretty easy process?
No, it was almost impossible. It was so hard to get bands to want to do it. I'm super grateful for Hidden in Plain View and Jack and Jonathan from Self Against City and Brian Cusiano from Sound the Alarm for giving me their time, and then Joe from Hidden in Plain View putting me in touch with like Stephanie and Stephanie Rains from Drive Thru Records, the co-owner, Stephanie and Richard Grains. Richard didn't want to be on camera, so he was kind of just like throwing in like information off camera. But I'm super grateful. But I reached out. I mean, I've kind of felt like Lenny in some ways. I know he trying to get bands to come there, would just reach out to a bunch of them, and I tried. I mean, Lenny, he actually sent me a list. He kept his like all the data of the bands that were there. So I reached out to like any of them that I thought were conceivably would do it, and also were big enough that people might know who they are, or had gone on to become bigger. And I mean, most of the time I just didn't hear back from them, and I tried every single avenue, whether it was like Facebook, Twitter, finding out their manager's contact information, emailing their manager, and trying to get them involved to some degree. And towards the end of it, ironically, I actually did hear back from quite a few, because I needed the like footage rights, or like mostly the music rights. Footage I got because I got it from Lenny, or from people that were okay with handing it over. But yeah, contacting the bands was super hard. And I had to fly out. I mean, to interview Self Against City, those guys that live in Los Angeles, so it was like, okay, I guess I'll make a trip out there to do it. So yeah, not the easiest thing for sure.
Cool. Well, I was gonna say I was really stoked when I saw Stephanie in there, because she wasn't in the trailer. And so did that happen after the trailer was put together? Because those trailers were up there for quite a while. Yeah,
they were. I think that one did happen afterwards. I mean, a lot of interviews did happen after the fact. That trailer was actually done because I ran an Indiegogo campaign to try to raise money to. I mean, again, this is something I learned too. Is like, I probably did it too early. But to be fair, I didn't think it was going to take me an extra 2 years to finish it.
Yeah.
But I did that. I mean, that was 2 years before, I got probably almost like 2.5 years before I got it done. And that was why that trailer was up, just to show people. In fact, I think like that was so early in the process that like one of the girls that I talked to afterwards made a comment about how like there was people missing from it. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm just getting there. I just didn't know. I mean, again, I just didn't know how many people were actually involved. So it was one of those things where it became this, and I say this in an endearing way, it became a monster in that sense.
Yeah, it takes a lot of people to keep something like that running, and even on a small scale. But very cool. So I saw in your credits that...
Yeah, so that... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I think there was some lag there or something, but I'm just going to say, I saw in the credits that you shot it on your iPhone, right? We're lagging.
I did, yeah. I did. Oh.
Was that just because did you not have another camera? And I mean, it looks great. I probably wouldn't have ever guessed that it was shot on an iPhone had it not been.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that. That actually means a lot, because I tried everything I could. I mean, I learned pretty early on that I needed to shoot as much as I could outdoors with good lighting.
Yeah.
Because I also didn't have lights. I mean, it wasn't a decision that I wanted to make necessarily. I didn't set out planning to shoot it on my iPhone. I had reached out to people who were producers or had connections and were asking them for camera suggestions. And the thing was like getting a camcorder now. I mean, even then I could have gone DSLR. But the one thing that I was worried about with that was because I was going to man the camera myself, I was always going to have to like keep an eye on it and switch out the SD cards and everything like that. So with the iPhone, it shot in 1080p, and I basically didn't have anything on my iPhone. I had like no apps, no games, none. I just kept it as minimal as possible to keep as much space on it. So I would shoot the interviews and then just upload them to my computer. Yeah, my older brother actually is the one that I can give credit to the idea, because he was the one who's like, I think he sent me an article about how they shot some of the scenes from the first Avengers on an iPhone, and it like made waves. So he sent me that, and I was like, okay, I mean, if this is a viable option. And then I looked into it, and you can buy, you know, these pretty heavy-duty rigs that you put your phone in, and there's adapters for a lav mic, and I just said, okay, like, if this is what it's going to take, this is what I'm going to do. And I think early on it was a pain in the ass. I mean, it was a pain in the ass always, but it was something that I kind of looked at like, well, now this will separate me from people, to be like, look, you can do anything you want to do, because you have this device literally in your pocket that's going to shoot. And now I started this on a 4S. Wow. So I started it there, and I think I ended it with a 6S. And the difference between the two, I mean, I don't know if you probably can't tell in the movie, but when I was watching the raw footage, it was pretty stark to see the difference. The thing about doing it on your iPhone or any, you know, lesser camera is you have to do a ton of work in post to actually make it look decent. So that was one of the biggest things, was how much work I had to do in post with it, because it was just, some of the footage was super noisy, and the coloring was bad, and that's the perils of doing it. But I have a newfound love, and I'm no way paid for this, but if you need anything like that, I highly recommend Neat Video, because that's what I use to denoise everything. But to clean it up, but also you have control over how much you actually want to do with that, so you can keep some of the grain in or not keep it and stuff like that. So shot it all on my phone, and I don't know. That's it.
And what program did you edit everything in?
So I use Final Cut X. I started with Adobe Premiere. I had learned on Final Cut, but I'd also learned Adobe, and part of my reasoning was I wanted to use Adobe because I felt like it was becoming more and more the industry standard, and just to use it. But I've ran into a lot of sync issues with audio with it. I think now it's probably better, but at the time, Final Cut was just so much easier, because you just select the clips and hit sync, and it would just sync it up. So that's when I switched over, and then I just stuck with it.
Cool. So did you ever consider going, deeper into the story of, what happened with Tuesday Tunes and all that after it wasn't the Capitol anymore? Or was it always the plan to kind of end it when it was done being called the Capitol?
I think the plan, I never really intended. I did try to reach out to the woman who owned Tuesday Tunes. Like, I tried to find her contact info and reach out to her to kind of talk to her about that process of taking it over, how difficult she found it, why did that place only last a year, or a little more than. So I did try to kind of take that angle, but when I didn't hear back after several attempts, I just kind of said, like, it's not really what the story is about anyway. So I just kind of, like, the fact that someplace like that couldn't last, I felt said enough.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I was more involved at that point. That was when I was, playing in bands myself, and trying to help out and trying to do everything I could to keep things going there. But that it was way past being able to be saved. Was some of that footage in the film? Did you get into the building to get some of that footage, like within the since it's been closed down?
I did. So the people that own the building, I can't remember their last name now. It's the same family that owns the original Italian pizza.
Okay.
In town.
Yeah.
And so I found that out, and then the son of the guy, he went to school with my brother. So I kind of reached out to him and was like, hey, I know you guys own this building. Like, can I get into it? Because I'm shooting this documentary, and I really love to see like what it looks like now. And he kind of was like, he said yes, but he was like, well, the workers are there at like different days, and I never really know when they're there. And I just kind of was like, well, it's not super helpful. So I just went down and actually went into the hair salon that's underneath it now, and was just like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Do any of you have keys that could like let me in?
Yeah.
And they did. So they just let me in, and I went up there and shot around for a while.
Cool. Yeah, I was just curious.
But I was like, if they hadn't let me in, I would have honestly just somehow snuck in some way.
I'm sure there has to be a way somewhere.
Here. Like, I need to see what it looks like.
Yeah. Cool.
Say that again?
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm sure there's probably several ways to get into that building.
Yeah, I feel like there definitely is if you really wanted to get in there.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. So, have you done a screening yet? I know you were saying there is one coming up. Can you tell me about your plan for the screenings and your release long term and?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you as far as I know them anyway.
Yeah.
We did a screening on May 17th at the Anthony Wayne Theater in Wayne, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
That was, in a lot of ways, just a way I wanted to say thank you to a lot of people for helping, support this. I have a lot of family, so that is like a suburb of Philadelphia,
mm-hmm.
And I have a fair amount of family in this area now that have, literally housed me during it, especially in the early days of it, and just supported. We did it there partially because, if I'm being completely honest, like, I knew that those people were not going to be able to make the trip to Shamokin or anywhere like that. The second reason is I don't really know where I would have held it in the area unless I had it in like one of the movie theaters in Bloomsburg or something like that. Like, I actually rented one of those out. But the Anthony Wayne Theater just seemed perfect for a lot of reasons. One of which is actually that the architect who designed that theater designed the Victoria Theater in Shamokin.
Oh, that's awesome. So
there was a cool connection, and when I found that out, I was like, this is where I want to do it. Like, it felt almost like serendipitous that was the case, that there's this theater that exists that, has a connection to Shamokin actually. Mm-hmm. So we had that. I think we had like 115 people come out, which was awesome. I think, people were calling it premiere. It wasn't, because there were some things that, and I'm glad I got a little bit of feedback on. So made a few technical tweaks, actually making a couple very small changes, because I thought the overall feedback was very, very positive, which I was really grateful for. And so the plan now is I've submitted it to a few film festivals, actually several film festivals. So we'll see, kind of what happens there with being accepted. I got into two of them right now. One is like it's called the iPhone Film Festival in Los Angeles. Which that one I was like, I hope I get into that, because if I don't get into that, I'm definitely not getting into the other ones. And then I just found out that I was accepted into the Impact Doc Awards, which it's a little different, but it's like it's only documentaries, and if you get accepted, then you're up for like the judging portion as far as like getting an award and things like that. So those are the two right now, but I think I've submitted to like 14 at this point, of all different varieties. I mean, I've kind of looked at it almost like applying to college, like, some that I think like I hopefully will get into, like, not that I should, I don't want to say it like that, but like, okay, these are smaller ones, there's a higher percentage chance that I get in. And then there's the ones like South by Southwest and like really big ones ones that I'm just kind of like, there's probably no way, but like, you never know. So
Yeah, and that
submitted there, and then go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I think you did a really great job of telling a story about Shamokin that will be interesting to somebody who watches it that wasn't necessarily a part of that scene or B from there. I think you did a really good job of presenting it, presenting that story.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. I think that was part of the reason I wanted to have this screening. I coach soccer too, and so I had a lot of like families that I coached that have no idea where Shamokin is, anything about it, and they really, that was part that they really liked. A part of it that they really liked was just kind of the history of Shamokin, and they felt like they learned a lot. And also, they said it made sense to them of why this place mattered in a way of like how it almost was like a throwback to that period, because there was, I mean, obviously not exactly, but just that there was lots of places like the Capitol when Shamokin was in its prime, and so that was really cool to hear. And then as far as like the appeal universally, I think that most people do know somebody from like a Rust Belt town, whether it doesn't have to be Pennsylvania, but Ohio, West Virginia, like Indiana, like any of those places, like Michigan with Detroit and Flint, and any place where there was like big industry that just never adapted. And it's sad because all those places probably could have been saved in one way or the other had different things happen in the course of its history in terms of decisions made. So I hope that in that sense, like it does kind of appeal to a larger audience. And to that end, not even before the film festival, like notifications come in, I'm going to, try to put some marketing collateral together and hopefully use some of the connections that I made in LA. Hopefully they haven't worn completely off from being away for so long, but and just other, and honestly, like, talking to Richard and Stephanie and just seeing, what's possible as far as getting it out there for distribution, because I would love to get it onto, a platform that is able to, like, not even necessarily make money, but just have eyes on it. I mean, Netflix would be amazing, HBO would be amazing. Like, I've thought about PBS because of the connection to, Shamokin and the history aspect of it. So I'm not necessarily being in any way exclusive as far as where I'm looking to try to distribute it. But worst case scenario too, like if nothing else happens, I'll put it up on my personal Vimeo and just blast the link out and let people be able to check it out.
Very cool. So I mean, I think it's cool to see how. I love the fact that you kind of took that DIY ethic that you picked up from the music scene and have applied it elsewhere in your life and with this project. And it's exciting to see that that DIY ethic goes beyond just music, and that's what I'm all about.
Thank you.
So
thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I say to a lot of people, I think there's almost, maybe it's just a sense in me of wanting to explain this side of it so as not to have people think like, when I say it, what I'm about to say, it sounds arrogant, and it's not the case at all, because like I did do everything myself, but I didn't do that by choice. It was just like I didn't have any money. I couldn't hire anybody. Like I didn't have the money to actually go through and do it, and I didn't know as much as I do now to understand of how to do a round of funding or how to present a pitch to somebody and say I need X amount of dollars to hire a crew, and like just a cameraman, lighting, and sound. Like just that alone would have been huge. Or maybe like some sort of like college intern to shoot these emails off to the bands and off to the producers and record labels and do the music licensing, like those things that I now know and are just, they're so pretty daunting. But I appreciate you saying that, because it was something that was like, it started out as something that I really wanted to do, and it was a passion project, with the means of like hopefully also providing more work afterwards for me personally.
Yeah.
Like I'm a very honest person. Like, yeah, I would hope that like this leads to being able to do other things. But if it didn't, I wanted to make sure that A, I got it done, and B, I told the story as best as I could, especially and do right by all the kids that were, not just the kids that were involved, but the kids that went to shows, and any kid that like ever didn't feel like they totally belong. Like, yeah, I played sports when I played soccer in an area that is dominated by football. It wasn't like, wasn't the most fun, to be fair, like through high school for me. And I just felt like that was, again, like how I felt at the Capitol. Like when I would go to any shows of that nature, of like punk shows, I always just felt kind of, I don't want to say at home, but at peace in some ways. Like that I knew that nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared, you know, what walk of life you came from, because they knew you were there to enjoy that music. So I really wanted to try to capture that, and I think there was a part of me too that I actually thought about how hard it probably was for Lenny and company to pull off the Capitol and make it work and run it, and I was trying to kind of honor that, especially in the moments that I wanted to give up, which there were a lot. There was a lot of times I was like, this sucks. This is the worst. I'm never going to get it done. It's not going to be what I want it to be. I don't have the means to make it that way. But like, you figure it out. Like, you figure out, like, okay, I don't have, you know, a super fast computer. I don't have like this editing suite, but what can I do? How can I kind of like hack this to make it work? And for me, luckily, this was a story, because it was a DIY story, and because Shamokin is kind of like a gritty coal mining town, I think a lot of that actually worked with it. And I think, you know, it's not going to work for everybody in every story to do it the way I did by any means, but yeah, like, I'm sorry, I kind of ramble.
Oh, no problem. Hey, I mean, but, I want you to talk. This is, you know, about you, and it's not about me. So.
Well, no, I feel like I get lost in the point of just saying, I mean, I'm really grateful and humbled to hear that, you know, you say that, because it's a weird thing to say, but because it took me so long to make this thing, it's just like, to know that, again, that one person is thinks it's cool and thought it was impactful is, you know, all I can really ask for. At the end of the day, like, everything else aside, that's why you make films, that's why you tell stories, just to impact people. Yeah,
and I mean, that's, you know, growing up being into subculture stuff in that area, you know, the Capitol was important to a lot of people, and, you know, I'm excited for other people to see it as well once it's available.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll try to give a better answer to that. I'll keep you posted on when, you know, what that was looking like, and I can say that, you know, hopefully it's been submitted to the Philadelphia Film Festival and the First Glance Film Festival, which is in Philly. I submitted to Pittsburgh Independent Film Festival, but I submitted in like the late deadline, and I did find out that I did not get into that one. So, like, unfortunately, again, like, kind of looking at like different pockets of where I thought, you know, it might resonate, but yeah, hopefully, you know, for people that are in the area and stuff like that, as far as if they wanted to get down to a film festival, hopefully, anyway. But
yeah, awesome. Now, do you have any idea, or are you still just, you know, dealing with all the, you know, still getting the Capitol of Nowhere out there, but do you have an idea for, you know, what you would want to do next as far as making a film, or, you know, got anything like cooking up there for as far as that's concerned?
I do. I think, yeah, I mean, it's hard because I as much as I would love to kind of switch gears and head into something different, which I think would do me good as far as like from a creative standpoint, but Yeah, so a couple ideas. I mean, I would love to get into narratives. Like, I don't want to just do nonfiction. And my brother and I have a script that was based off a lot of his experience and his kind of life in Philadelphia during college in a very tumultuous but very interesting time of his life. But from a documentary standpoint, there's a few actually that I'm very interested in. One is along this, just staying on the music side of things. One is actually kind of like that whole scene in like Drive Thru Records. Like Richard actually said when I interviewed him, or when he was sitting in the room, that he'd wanted to do a documentary on Drive Thru Records. He went to school for film, so he had that's what he wanted to do. And he had thought about like a drive-through documentary because, I mean, if you look at some of the acts that label launched, I mean, if you just take Andrew McMahon and Jack Antonoff, you have two pop stars now.
Yeah.
I mean, they are stars. And then if you go into like I can't remember his name from like Cobra Starship, and he was from Midtown.
Yeah.
And then like Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional and Newfound Glory, and like, all these bands and acts that are now huge. And so kind of doing a more thorough investigation on them, because there was a lot of stuff that I had to leave out of this film that I would have loved to put in. Like, there is an unbelievable parallel between the Capitol and Drive-Thru. They maxed out a credit card to get it started. They were doing this like cable access TV show, but the bands they interviewed were crazy. Like, they interviewed Radiohead and Oasis and Jimmy Eat World, and like you can go on YouTube and just do like I can't remember shit. Oh, Sideshow is the name of this. There was the name of the show. So if you like Sideshow, LA, like Stephanie Rains or Richard Rains or something like that, I think you can find some stuff that I wanted to include that, and just like the parallels between I'd actually had it cut at one point where I was cutting back and forth between Lenny and Stephanie talking about like how they got stuff started. Yeah. And it was so fucking similar that I was like, this is insane that they basically did the same thing where they just rolled the dice and it worked out. Yeah. But so that was one. As being a college athlete, like the pay for play argument is a very interesting one to me, and I think it's been covered a lot, but it's only been covered from the standpoint of the revenue sports. They don't really talk about people who are playing softball or swimming or running track that, like, yeah, you might be on a scholarship, but like you're not gonna play that sport after college, most likely. Like, unless and even if you do, you're not gonna make the money that you make in football, basketball, and I mean, I guess baseball is not really a revenue sport, but you're just not going to make the money. Yeah. But you still have to put the amount of time in that those athletes do, and it's still like, from a personal standpoint, and kids that I knew that I went to school with, it can be a detriment. And when you're like so focused on something, you come out of school, you're like, well, now what? I don't think every kid has that answer. Not everybody knows. And then sometimes even if you do, you're like, well, I want to change, or I want to go to grad school, but now like, so that's another one. And then from like a more of like a social aspect, I had the really cool fortune to coach on the University of Pennsylvania women's soccer team. Oh, awesome. And I was surprised to see how few women head coaches there are in women's sports. And so I just thought that there's something there, and I wanted to know what the reasons why are, because I saw firsthand like how important a really strong female role model can be for other females. Like, it's not to say that a man can't do that. Obviously they can, but I think in seeing like the dynamic between, because I was the only guy, so it was an all-female staff on women's team, and then me. So I got to really witness, just how important that is. So those are a few of the ideas I have, but I feel like, I kind of try to jot them down every now and then if I think I come up with like a decent one. But yeah, off the top of my head, those are the three that stick out the most that I like to try to pursue.
Now, do you have a website for all of your film stuff, or would the best place for people to check out what's happening be the Capital of Nowhere's Facebook page?
Definitely not the Facebook page because I've been terrible at updating it, at least right now. I do plan on updating it and trying to put like some kind of like little clips up, little teaser clips for people to see.
Yeah.
But I actually did start a website for both like the Capital of Nowhere and for my other work. Mostly just that stuff's just more just like advertising and like little stuff for businesses. But yeah, you can go there and see the trailer. There's a page on this site dedicated to the Capital of Nowhere, and it is 3pairproductions.com, and it's the number 3,
okay,
and then just pair as PAIR and productions.com.
Okay.
And yeah, so that you can, again, see the trailer, kind of, there's some shots of Shamokin, and I plan on, trying to get to that in the next couple of weeks where there's some blog posts and things like that, updating people and, allowing people to kind of know the process a little bit better as far as like where the process is with festivals and distribution and, again, putting, little clips up and stuff like that. It's just, I'm sure, like doing something like that, unfortunately, it's like I got to figure out how to do it in the time, like downtime right now.
Yeah.
So that's the tough part is finding the time to do that. But, yeah, I would say, that website is probably the best. And then I actually, because I've seen like on Facebook now, it's like, oh, the Capital of Nowhere has like 2 new views. I'm like, shit, like it's not updated at all.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to update that and make it a stronger presence for people.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely in the show notes. I'll have links in there. So just want to make sure people can check stuff out. I don't want to end on this note, but I do want to talk about that. I'm just curious. Did you know Kyle Dunkelberger before you started the film, or did you meet him because of doing the film?
I did not know him beforehand, so I met him through the film. I can say, unequivocally that he was a really, really cool guy, and he's a really good guy, and he's somebody that when you watch the film, when people watch the film, he'll probably be your favorite character.
Yeah.
He'll probably be the guy that you like the most. He also was, because he was very charismatic, and he said a lot of great things just about the venue. I mean, not giving anything away, he closes the film out, and he closes it out in a very poignant way. And the hard part for me was he had actually kind of like reached out like after the interview to kind of like hang out a few times. And I was like working in Philly, like bartending, and he came. I told him, I was like, I'm working, but you can come in, because he was down here for work, I guess. And he popped in and like brought his guitar, and like the restaurant was closed, but it was like the staff hanging out. He was playing music, and it was hard for me because I was trying to keep like the filmmaker separation of like, well, like, not that I wouldn't be friends with you, but like until this thing is done, like I don't really want to blur that line necessarily. And like, I think there was a point in time where I actually felt I actually did feel kind of fairly guilty about that, knowing what happened to him, because it was like, maybe I should have, put that guard down a bit more and opened up. But at the same time, like, I don't know. So I didn't know him until afterwards, but definitely felt like a connection and a bond, and he was a really good dude. So it's sad to know,
Yeah, I mean, I only asked just because he's somebody that I've known for, dude, before either of us were into music. He was, my grandparents' neighbor, so we kind of used to ride BMX bikes and build dirt jumps and back behind his house. So and we haven't been close in a long time, but our paths crossed through music then several years later. So like I said, I don't want to end it on such a bummer, but I didn't want to go through this interview and not mention him because, I mean, like I said, he's somebody I knew for a very long time. So,
need to say, I mean, he was in it and unfortunately passed. Before. I think that was where I struggled too. Was he and the historian in the film, Garth Hall, both passed before I could get it done.
Oh wow!
And, yeah. And that was something that I felt really bad about because, you want everybody that's involved to see it. You want them to feel, especially to know, like, to feel done right by, and not being able to get it done, before that happened. And not that, I knew it was going to happen with either of them, but I think that's where I struggled with that as well, in terms of being affected by it.
Yeah. So are you back home, to kind of change the subject a little bit, are you back home in Pennsylvania? Are you there to stay, or do you think you'll be going back to LA or elsewhere?
It's funny you should ask that question. I'm currently in Pennsylvania,
okay.
But I'm actually going to be moving to Denver in July.
Cool.
Yeah. I had thought about, after the film was done, I always kind of knew I wasn't going to stay in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. I initially definitely thought I was going to go back to LA.
Yeah.
But as time passed, and I got well, I'll just say, like, I was dating somebody that lives in Denver, and I fell in love with the city as well as that person, and it just felt like, for what I want to do, there's actually a lot of opportunities in that area. There's a lot of media and like startups, but also there's obviously a lot of music. There's a great music scene and the outdoors aspect of it and that lifestyle. So it's more of I would say a lifestyle move in terms of what that area has to offer, and being closer to the West Coast without actually being on the West Coast for me. But yeah, I mean, I'll always be coming back, and I honestly don't have a timeline as far as like how long I'll be there, or if how things are going to work. But yeah, so that's my plan right now. Is come July, I'll be moving out there. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure of with the film is that there is somebody here, and my brother Dave, he was really like the only person that really helped me as far as from like almost like a pseudo producer side. So he'll, I've told him, I'm like, hey, you might be working as a producer for no money for a little bit when I'm away, as far as like, trying to hold other screenings and stuff like that to gain a little bit more traction and stuff.
Yeah.
But my mom's still in Shamokin, so and like I said, my other family's over here, so I'll be back. Especially if it gets into these film festivals, like I would really like to be there, so definitely be back.
Yeah, I'm always curious because I feel like there's not a lot of us that I feel like a lot of people don't get out of the area. I feel it seems like people just get stuck there. So as somebody who grew up there and always wanted to leave and did, I still have this kind of fondness for this weird place in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I get it, because I think that's the a little bit of the what would you call it, like pitfall, like the trap that you fall into with the area, though, because you romanticize it so much, and you remember like what it was like when you were growing up, and like you're saying about Knoebels, like as much of that's like kind of funny to joke about, like when I think about Knoebels, like I only have good memories.
Oh yeah,
like, there's not a bad memory, you know what I mean? And so you romanticize it, and then you get back there, and like when I go to visit my mom, I'm just like, oh man, like it's not what it used to be at all, even like when we were growing up. So it is tough, and I feel for the kids that are there now. Again, like there's a lot that didn't make the cut. I interviewed current high schoolers for the film to kind of get their perspective, and again, very interesting. Didn't really fit into the film, but it was 3 kids, and like it was funny because it was like one kid who's like, I want to leave and never come back, and then one girl who's like, well, I kind of want to go for college, but I think I might like come back at some point. I don't know. And then one who's like, I don't want to leave because I don't know anything else, and it's kind of scary to do that.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to see, even from a sample size of just 3, that you got one of each. I kind of thought it would either be like all one or like one rogue, but two that would be the same. So, yeah, I also I'm kind of hopeful too that by like leaving the area and trying to promote the film will actually help, you know, widen the potential net that people become interested in.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the plan. And yeah, I don't know.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for, you know, taking an hour out of your busy schedule to chat with me about the film. Like I said, I really enjoyed it, and
thanks, man. No, I just really appreciate it. I was very humbled when you asked, and stoked to be able to join you tonight. And yeah, I mean, I hope people check it out, and I hope they take something away from it, whatever that might be.